Welcome back to the Well-Fed Business Podcast. Now, before we get stuck in, because today's episode, I'm going to be fucking useless. We're talking all about being a business owner and a parent. John, you're a parent, aren't you?
Unfortunately.
So you're going to be an absolute expert in how to run a business and raising kids at the same time.
Yeah, the easiest way is to get the little fuckers adopted
Yeah, I'm making notes because I haven't got any children.
or send them to boarding school and get them returned when they're 18, you know? Barring that, it's a challenge. And just because of the way society is structured, it's mostly a challenge for women. Women who start their own businesses are, generally speaking, the de facto primary childcare provider. So they not only have to run their businesses in a generally more female unfriendly environment, because I mean even women freelancers generally get lower rates than men, which is actually on the women's shoulders. It's not society or anyone else or the government. It's up to them to ask more. Now, on that topic, the first question we need to ask is about childcare and running a business around children, because I see a lot of people complaining and saying the government should help them more. Well, the first question we need to answer, and I'm not offering a position here for the hard of thinking, I'm asking the question: is having children a lifestyle choice? It's a very simple question, yes or no. Now, it seems with a lot of people, we're not even allowed to ask the question. And I think people going into business with children should also ask those questions of themselves. Now, before anyone starts saying, yeah, it's all right for you, you've got a penis, you're a middle-aged white male, you're part of the problem. And anyone who goes around saying you are part of the problem because we got a different opinion from you is actually part of the problem. When I started my business about 20 years ago, I was a single father to 3 children with a mortgage to pay and no job and no income and no help from anyone. My ex-wife would have the kids half the time where she'd shacked up with her new bloke, but otherwise the kids were with me and I had no help from anyone, not the government, no handouts. So I have done this. So, please don't give me this white male privilege bollocks. I've done it.
So what challenges did you face?
Getting straight done.
Was that the big one?
Yeah, because, your kids, Alfie was probably 2 and disabled, thereabouts 22 months or something and disabled. Rosie was 3, 4. Holly was about 6. So they were all young. A couple of them were at school. I think Rosie was at school. I can't remember now, that far back. Rosie was at school. Alfie wasn't. So when he was with me, I pretty much had snatches here and there throughout the day to work. But really, it was a case of when the kids went to bed about 8 o'clock at night, I started work and I'd finish about 2 in the morning and then get up at 6 the next morning to start it all over again. And that's what I had to do. Now, that's not easy. That's exhausting, especially when you don't particularly like young children very much. And I don't. I never did, because I don't get them. It's fucking hard work. They want to do the most inane shit. At 3 o'clock in the morning, can we do face painting? No, fuck off.
Not only are you dealing with young children, you're trying to build a new business with no income, no job. Well, you probably found that a bit easy because you've always been that way inclined. But for most people, trying to start a new business when they got no fucking idea what to do, plus little kids running around the gaff.
Failure wasn't really an option. There was shit I had to do. And this is like the mantra of my life. Whatever needs to be done, I'll just get on and do it. I've had some bad news this week, as you're aware. And it's a real clusterfuck. But what do? We get on, we do what needs to be done. Because what's the alternative? You don't do it, and then what? So I think that was partly one of the reasons I very quickly, and I was very open to the idea of charging more and being very strict with myself and my clients and my prospects, because again, as a parenting thing, I've always been very strict with boundaries with my kids. Holly once said to me in the last 5 years or so, she said, I used to think you were a really strict dad, but then I realized when I was about 10, you're not strict at all. What you are is you're firm with your boundaries. As long as we kept within the boundaries, you didn't care and you'd give us a lot of latitude. But if we tried to break your rules, like if they lied to me, that is an absolute no-no. I don't care what you've done, you don't lie to me. If you lie to me, I can't defend you.
You mentioned something there very quickly that I think is quite important. Because you recognise you had limited time, to actually work for clients because you're trying to build a business on top of that, and you've got fucking little kids running all over the place, or in Alfie's case, not so much running.
Pulling himself along on his arms, commando style.
So you decided, right, limited amount of time, I need to make some fucking money. So I need to be making as much money from that limited time as possible. So you charge premium rates from the get-go.
Yeah, pretty much. But I was fortunate enough to come across Dan Kennedy very early. And I read all this stuff. This stuff didn't just occur to me. I read it and I thought, yeah, I'm going to do that. Just the same way as people now listening to this can say, yeah, I heard EBG say this, I'm going to do that. So one thing I did was I started charging more, and I became much, much stricter with my time. So it's probably 18, 19 years ago, I stopped taking people's calls just because they called me. You can't just call me. You schedule it. Now, of course, Calendly and the scheduling services were not available back then, but it was done by email. Nobody just drops in to chat. I haven't met people just for coffee to discuss how we might help each other, again, for probably 2 decades. That's a direct result of me being on a limited time budget. Yeah, these things were a matter of necessity for me. A lot of the problems I see discussed around children, never mind the cost of childcare, which is a completely different issue, which will be somewhat ameliorated by you charging more money and making more money. People these days, they don't seem to want to take responsibility for these things. They think it should be somebody else's responsibility, and it isn't. Never is, never was, never should be either.
If you're a business owner, you need to embrace the idea of extreme ownership, or you're never going to get anywhere fast. Everything has to be your responsibility. Everything that goes wrong is your fault, and therefore it's your prerogative to fix it. If you've got kids and they're being a pain in the ass and they're getting in the way of work, you and only you have to do something about it.
The shit I see people and their children. I see people pissing and moaning about this Andrew Tate bloke, and they're saying my children are being radicalised by him, and they're behaving as if they have no say in what their children are exposed to. Now, if you're buying your fucking kids, say your 10-year-old boy, if you're buying your 10, 12, 13-year-old kid an iPhone and allowing him to have unfettered access to this stuff, that is on you. It is not up to the fucking internet service providers or the government or God or Jesus or anyone else to make the internet safe for your children. It's like making the roads safe. You teach your kids fucking road safety, don't you? Well, you should. You teach them water safety. Don't fucking go in deep water, etc., etc. Ironically enough, Rolf Harris used to do adverts, public safety adverts about that years ago, before you were born. How is it different to say you need to teach your kids healthy internet use and enforce it? Now, parenting, and I've always said this, I said it in emails 10 years ago, parenting from my point of view is really a case of damage limitation. You can't stop your kids from doing stupid shit. You show me one adult who won't admit to having done stupid shit as a kid. I did loads of stupid shit as a kid. We make good decisions based on generally bad experiences. We experience bad experiences through having made bad decisions. That's how we learn. You learn a radiator's hot the best way by putting your fucking hand on it and getting it burned. How many times have you told your kids, don't go near the radiator, it'll burn you? And they just ignore you until, guess what, they burn themselves. And they go, oh, I don't want to do that. But it is a challenge. I'm not denying it's a challenge, but it's one you need to be responsible for yourself. It's not up to God, the government, LinkedIn, or anyone else to fix your fucking parenting problems around your work. It's up to you. Charge more.
Definitely charge more. Definitely take extreme ownership. But you also mentioned that you had quite firm rules and boundaries in place with your kids. Did you have any in particular that helped you get work done, keeping them at bay perhaps?
Yes, one in particular was you don't touch anything on my desk, ever. No, it's a hanging offence almost. Don't lie to me is another one, but that's not really to do with business. That's just a general one.
It kind of is, because if you think your kids are lying to you and they're not being honest, you got to waste time. You're probably fretting about it.
It applies across the whole board, you know. What I did try, and this was a more difficult one. It was a rule and boundaries and stuff, but it was harder to enforce or get the message across. It was when I'm sitting at my desk, you don't talk to me. I'm not in the room unless you're actually on fire or something. I don't want to hear it. But when I'm not at my desk, then my attention is fully on you. Another thing is this: I'm their dad. I'm not their best friend. I don't want to be their best friend. I'm the leader of the family, and they know if the shit hits the fan, Dad's there. And if we've told the truth, there's nothing he won't defend us against. If we've done something wrong, we will pay the consequences. That's a given. But I will make sure they're fair and proportionate. If you're lying to me, I've got no leg to stand on. And you get done twice then. Once you'll be in the shit for what you've done, and then you'll be in the shit for lying to me. And you'll be in the shit for lying to me far worse than anything else.
I just feel like everything would be solved by a little bit more critical thinking and a few more Socratic questions.
Always. Always. Socrates was probably one of the smartest men ever to have lived because he nailed it.
Well, they hated him as well, didn't they?
Yes. Oh, they always do. They hate anyone who tells the truth. Nothing will make you unpopular quicker than telling you the truth. Socrates is almost certainly directly responsible for the scientific method we have. There's a very good chance we would have stumbled across it anyway, because form follows function. Someone would have figured it out. But the point is, Socrates did figure it out, and he figured it out very early on, thousands of years ago. You know, there's a wealth of education on this shit for free. All the writings of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Plato, Socrates, all these people, it's freely available. It's out of copyright. You can get it for a couple of quid because people own the right to the translation. Of course they do. But you can get it off the internet. It's free, and still people ignore it, make bullshit up, or worse, some of them regurgitate it and claim to have made it up.
I imagine Socratic questioning's rather helpful with children because it's helpful with clients.
It is helpful with children. Yeah,
Because people treat their children like idiots, I find.
they do. And imagine we talked about Andrew Tate. Now, I'll be very clear about this. I've never listened to Andrew Tate. I've got no real idea who he is, nor do I care. What I have heard about him isn't very good, but I suspend judgment because I've not heard it myself. But let's assume Andrew Tate is the monster they make him out to be, and he's misogynist and all the rest of it. Let's assume that's the case. Should he be silenced? No. What we should be doing is asking the people who are listening to him, the young children and the young adults who are listening to him, and ask them Socratic questions and ask them questions to defend the points this guy is allegedly coming out with. And it won't be long before they talk themselves into a corner. Because if what I've heard about what he says is true, he's coming out with all kinds of nonsense and it doesn't stand up under critical thinking. It's all emotional, masculine bollocks. Okay, not that I'm against masculinity. I'm against that kind of thing because doesn't stand up to critical thinking. Critical thinking will expose bigotry for the stupidity it is. We can't do that if we don't allow the bigotry to be spoken. If we silence people or try to silence people like Tate and Jordan Peterson, etc., then we can never have discussions about what they're saying because it becomes verboten. You know, it's a very dangerous place to go. So if your kids are parroting people like Andrew Tate and coming out with all this misogynistic bollocks, rather than getting angry with them and telling them you can't listen to that, just ask them, well, why would you say that? And then one of the best things is when they say something which is clearly uncritically thought out, think of an exception. Well, what about this then? How does that explain that? It's a very low-level way, very easy way, non-confrontational way of getting people to talk themselves, to paint themselves into a logical corner. Works very, very well. They don't like it, but it still works.
Yeah. And kids are stupid, but they're not that stupid. You always harped on about you shouldn't hit kids because if you believe that they can't understand the reason you're hitting them, then you don't fucking hit them because they're going to think that you're just hitting them for hitting them's sake.
If you can't reason with a child, hitting it won't help because it won't understand why you're hitting it. Another question, again, when people say it doesn't do them any harm, you'd ask the question, would you think it'd be reasonable to slap an adult for doing something that just displeased you? No, of course it wouldn't. At what age would it be appropriate? When on what day does that change? Thursday it's not okay, Friday it is, or whatever. Thursday is okay, Friday it's not. What age would that be? And is it the same age for everyone? And how do we know? And who makes the rules? These are all Socratic questions. And you'll find people, they can't answer them. They can't answer them. So surely the line has to be you don't hit other people non-consensually at all.
Yeah, I think they'd probably draw the line when they reach an age where the child could fight back a bit and potentially hurt them. And they'll draw the line because that's the line where they can understand. But no, deep down, it's because you know your child is younger, fitter, and will fucking whoop you. Well, why don't you do me a favour? Just summarise the top 3 things that we've spoke about to help those that are trying to build a business, trying to run a business, whilst they got little itty bitty kiddies.
First thing is extreme ownership. Remember, you are responsible for your children. It is a lifestyle choice, I believe. What we do about that is another matter of debate, which I'm not going to go into now, but it's your responsibility to run your business around your children. No one else's. That's the first thing. Second thing is your time will be limited, which means you need to make more money in a smaller amount of time than most people. So you need to charge more. That's it. All right. And you need to not just charge a random amount more, but you need to sit down and do your numbers. Childcare costs me 200 quid a week. Therefore, I need to making at least £200 a week before tax to take out the business so I can pay that. And the third thing is rules and boundaries for your clients, for your prospects, for you, and of course, your children.
Cheers, John. I'm now very well prepared to have children. The price of core control is going up immediately, and I'm only working 2 hours a day. Perfect.
You don't even work that now.
It's time to go. We're putting some more time and effort into the bronze community, and it is going to be all around this podcast. By the time this comes out, we would have released a new free course onto the membership site. The majority of our podcast listeners are already on there. If you go to the classroom, it's the Business Accelerator 2.0. You fucking love it. We've also got the upcoming training this Thursday. If you have any questions that you'd like us to answer about selling on that training, you can go to the bronze membership group and you can ask them there. Anything to add, Johnny baby?
No.
As always, if you want our help, you can email holly@wellfedbusiness.com and we can book you in for a 15-minute triage call. Find out where you are, where you want to go, and the obstacles that are in your way. But other than that, fuck off. Put your kids up for adoption or take responsibility for them. See you later.